Okay, well, first of all, it's an absolute pleasure to join everybody tonight. I'm so excited on so many levels. Um, and I want to start off by just giving us a moment to really tune into the experience that we did share on the weekend and tuning into that circle that was created and that vibration of love and light and joy that was created by each and every one of us. It was a co-creation, and it couldn't have happened if one of us wasn't there. You know, it was something that we all co-experienced, and it's just absolutely beautiful to tune into. And it's a memory, and what happens is we actually store our memories in our water that's in our body, and our body is made up of 80-90% of water. Everybody argues of how much actually is water, and it doesn't matter. When there is sound with water, it's amazing how it actually affects it. There's actually a whole study on this that I could share with you guys later. But for example, there was glasses where they put like negative words around, and then how the water was affected when it froze. It was all like broken up and just crushed and not looking so good. And then they did glasses where there was lots of positive words like love and happy and joy and all these sorts of things, and the water looked like snowflakes, how it froze, and it was like crystals, and it's absolutely amazing. And they also did this with music and having like hardcore, I don't know, like heavy metal, just like hard music versus like classical or positive word lyric music. And it was the exact same thing. So when we have these experiences with that vibration that we had, it's stored within our body, and it's something that we can always tap into. And I just want to let you know that. And I also want it to be completely real, because we have these experiences, and like I said at that night, you don't need drugs when you meditate, you know, you really don't, because you just get on such a high. But just like drugs, we can come on a low as well, and we have that high, we have that experience, and we're so pumped and we're so there and connected, and then all of a sudden we go into real life, and not everybody's carrying that vibration. I don't know if you've noticed, but not everybody's there, and a lot of people are really in their shit. They're really focused on the things that are right in front of them, and they're miserable, and they're negative, and there's all these different things. And it's so important to respond with love in those situations, and to understand that when we encounter those people, there are parts of us that are mirroring. And I think it's really important to talk about this, because as we generate a massive, strong circle with all of us, we also have our little circles, and we have a responsibility in those little circles to really own who we are and hold our vibration, so that when we encounter other people, we can help support them in whatever it is that they're going through. And it's so important, because when I look at each of you, I know your goals and I know your dreams, and I'm like, awesome, but I also see all the people that you impact, and I just see just the lines and the ripples that are happening, and you're just one single stone in the center that's tossed in, and the ripples you'll never know. So when I speak to you, I'm not just speaking to you for you, I'm speaking to you for your families, your partners, your kids, your coworkers, your clients, all the people that you're really supporting, and that you're going to be making a massive impact just by being you. And I really wanted to share that, and also talk about the shit that comes up. Because let's be real, a lot of stuff comes up, and it's stinky. You know, it can be super stinky, and I think you need to honor that it comes up. And you know, I'm going to talk a little bit about energy and masculine and feminine energy. And our masculine energy is the one that, you know, let's go for it, let's pump this up, let's go, like the to-do list, let's get our shit done, boom, 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 let's, you know, it's the grounded, the practical, the logical, the problem solver, the really, the powerhouse in us. And then we have our feminine energy, that's more of the creative flow, the emotions, the gentleness, the compassion, the nurturing side of us. And I don't care if you're a man or if you're a woman, that does not matter. We both have masculine and feminine energy within us. And it's so important as a man to know both, and as a woman to know both. Because then you go into a relationship, and if you don't know the other side, you're going to be trying to connect, and it's not going to happen. And I speak relationship, you know, a lot of you guys, and I just love it, like especially you know, the bros in this. You guys are just, I love how you are impacting the world. It's so, so, so needed. But to embrace that feminine side, and I don't mean, you know, I don't want to make everybody gay. Like that's not what this is about. It's just about understanding that creative flow. And I think, Mike, you really tapped into it, because it's like that working hard and the go-to and like to the point where you made yourself sick. And it's really about finding that beautiful balance where you work hard, but then you soften up and you have compassion with yourself and you allow yourself the space that you need to just breathe and tune in and just be. And when the stuff comes up, and I know that it will, and some of you, it came up in the circle where, you know, these things that you never thought of came up and were right in your face. Or sometimes it comes up when you're in your everyday, and then there's, you know, that button pusher that comes into your little circle, and they just push and push and push. Don't make anybody right or wrong. And it's about understanding, okay, what's the lesson in this? I'm going to just share an example because sometimes that's helpful. I went out for lunch this week with a friend that I haven't seen in forever, and then another friend who I haven't seen in years came, and I was so excited to be with these two people. I was so pumped, and they had invited a third person, and I had no idea who this third person was, and the third person just like totally took over the conversation. And at the moment I was like, oh, like I just want to catch up with these two. I don't even know this girl, like, you know. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, what's going on here? Why is this happening? Like what's going on that is I need to be aware and open to? And I just kind of sat back and listened and tuned into what she was sharing about. And she was, you know, complaining a lot about her sister and complaining a lot about her kids and all these sorts of things. And you could just tell she was just rough. You know, she was rough in the way that she spoke, and she was rough in the way that she lived. And I'm thinking, I just came from it from a place of curiosity. All of a sudden, she starts talking about how, and I don't know what possessed her to even start talking about this, but she started saying about how she went through the drive-through at Tim Hortons, which is like a cheaper version of Starbucks for you guys. I don't know. So there's some Tim Hortons in the States and some places. And she started saying how when she was at the window, she decided to buy the coffee of the person who ordered behind her. And she's like, you know, every once in a while I just do these good deeds. And she even used good deeds. And I'm like, whoop, there it is. And she starts saying, yeah, you know, like sometimes when I feel good, I do a good deed for somebody and it makes me feel even better. And I get really excited. And she starts talking about this story. Well, doesn't she go home later and somebody wrote to her on Facebook, and it was actually somebody who knew her, and she bought their coffee and didn't know. And she starts sharing this story of like, you know, the connection in that and how like the good deeds and this whole conversation. And I thought, okay, this is why I'm sitting here. I needed to hear this, and I needed to remember that the divine is in everyone. And, you know, there is a part of us in everyone. And when we think, oh, we can get really, you know, we meditate and we get into this place and we own and we chant and, you know, we're all like super centered and solid. Anybody can go sit under a tree and meditate. It's easy. Anybody can go and sit by the water and listen to it and feel peaceful. But how do you maintain that in the middle of the chaos? How do you maintain that centeredness and that place of love and that place of compassion no matter where you are, no matter what situation you're in? And when you get put in these situations, it's like the rope course of life, you know, where you're put into a challenge and it's like you got to get excited about it and got to see, okay, like what's in here that I need to learn, or what's in here that's happening that I can offer something or share something that's helpful. I don't know all the answers for you. I know that every experience that you have is something that's serving you, and a lot of times it's also a reflection of what frequency and vibration that you're in. So if you're noticing that there's, you know, you wake up late and you're running and you stub your toe and you're pissed off about that, and then you don't have time to have your hot drink in the morning, and then you're running late and you're speeding, you're in traffic, and you're in a frequency. And it's so important to be able to name what frequency you're in so that you can interrupt it and get into a new frequency. And we get into these habits and these patterns. And I want to share this with you because a lot of times you have experiences like HPP, you come across these amazing people, you learn all this amazing information, and you know, you want to just jump right in and apply it all. And it's great to do that, and I totally support it and encourage that. And at the same time, you really need to name and own your old patterns and your old habits, and be able to interrupt those and replace them with something new. So I'm going to share a little bit more about that too, because I think it's important not to be hard on yourself. So I want to share ways that you could do it that's fun and playful, because that's what I'm really all about. It's not, okay, everybody meditate for 2.5 hours and make sure you do your yoga and make sure you do this and let's add more things to your list so that you can have a hard and heavy life. No, oh my God, no. Just to come from a place of fun, playfulness, and silliness, and allow these experiences to be easy for you, because, oh my God, life is already so hard that if you're hard on yourself, why? That's, you just to lay off yourself and to have compassion for yourself, because when you don't practice that for yourself, you'll never have that compassion for other people. So, playfulness. I've gotten into this amazing strategy of naming my patterns, and it's been so much fun, and I want to share it with you because of how much fun it is. And I think, I could be dancing with schizophrenia a little bit here, but in a controlled way. And the idea is that these different personalities come up and these different patterns come up, and our energy changes. We get into certain emotions and we get into a certain space that isn't serving our highest good anymore. It's not serving the goal that we want to get to. So for example, you have HPP, you're on a high vibration, you're all pumped up, you go home and you're ready to rock and roll, and then, something doesn't happen right when you want it to happen. Oh, and then, you get an interruption by this person, and then you spend too much time with that person at work that's really negative, and then, this thing happens, and slowly, your frequency starts to change. And your old patterns and your old habits start to kick in there. So I have this one energy that I get into, and it's just like this icky lower energy that's so negative. And I finally decided to just call her Bitter Betty, because she reminds me of like this old woman who is just so, I don't know if you've ever encountered someone who's been around for too long and has seen too many negative things and has no hope for the world and is just so angry. She's got a little bit of that energy going on. So I call her Bitter Betty, and when Bitter Betty comes, just saying it makes me giggle. So it's like I already interrupt the pattern right there. And then I'm like, okay, Bitter Betty, like, what do you need right now that's gonna help you out here? And sometimes she just needs some like gentle care. Sometimes she just needs to vent, and then I hold space for that. I don't know what Bitter Betty sometimes just needs to rest. That's what she needs to rest. And another one that I shared with a couple of you guys this week is I've gotten into this really terrible, not terrible, but I've gotten into this pattern that doesn't really help me out, and it's this, I don't know. When something comes up and it's like, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know, like, what should I do? And it's just this energy of, I don't know. And that's so silly to be in that kind of energy, because we all know. That's what meditating is all about, is to tune in and to get all the answers. And I fucking know what's going on. So why do I have this pattern? Because it's an old pattern. So I've called her Stella, and anytime this pattern shows up and I think I don't know, or I say I don't know, or even like the words are around in some way, I'm like, oh, it's time for Stella. And Stella is all about getting her groove back. So all I do is I turn on some music and I start dancing until I shake Stella out, and all of a sudden I'm laughing, giggling, and it's all good to go, and I could go right back into whatever I'm doing, and I know exactly what needs to be done. So these are just a couple examples of things that I do that interrupt patterns, and I think it's really helpful, especially to use music, because when we get in these, you have to remember that patterns hold an energy, and that can carry an emotion, and these are all old stuff, and you can use music to elevate you and to move you to a different frequency. It's just like a radio station, you're trying to move that dial and to get onto a song that you like and a song that you love. So my frequency that works for me might not be the frequency that works for you, and that's okay. Like, somebody might really need to, listen to the Rocky soundtrack and get pumped up and jump up and down and get onto like this tiger roar kind of thing. And when I'm gonna go play a sport, I'm totally into that. But when I'm going to start my day, that's just not me. I like to be in a different type of frequency. And there is no right or wrong. It's just whatever one works for you and works for what it is that you need to do. So sometimes you need a frequency that calms you. Sometimes you need a frequency that jacks you up. Sometimes, you need a frequency to just shake it all out. And I want you to know that I work at a, well, not anymore, but I do now, but I did quit. I was working at a children's mental health agency, and there's a lot of shit going on for kids these days. And sitting and hearing those things over and over and over again, and being sensitive to energies, like it's hard. It really is hard to hear that kind of stuff. So, I use a lot of the strategies I'm sharing with you, where I go and I center myself through breathing or chanting. But then sometimes I just get in my car and I freaking blast the music and I just scream and dance and just pump it up and just get all of that out. And I share all this in a very honest and raw way. But I want you to know, like, sometimes I really do feel crazy, and I think that's okay. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, if somebody saw me right now, they would just be like, whoa, what's the deal? But I think we need to embrace crazy sometimes and just let that energy pour right out and just be you and honor every side of you that comes up. Honor the negative Nancy, honor the part of you that doesn't know, honor the part of you that doubts and fears and all of these sorts of things, and don't make them right or wrong, and don't try to shovel them under a rug somewhere, because they're going to come up. They're definitely, in some way or another, they're definitely going to show up. And when you look at them in a place of playfulness and silliness, they can't live for long. They can't dwell in your home for too long, because you just totally interrupt their patterns. And know that all of these patterns come because you've had experiences from when you were young and till now, where you really had hurts and pains and bruises, and you've really experienced different types of traumas, and you've experienced times where you wanted something and you didn't get it. You've experienced times where you expected something from someone and they didn't follow through. So I share all of this in a really playful way because of the heaviness of it. And the little child in us has gone through a lot and hasn't necessarily had the support that it's needed growing up to share in a safe space, or has had to take control because maybe a parent didn't take care of you, instead you had to take care of a parent, or didn't even have a parent. Like, there's so much stuff, and to be able to sit here and say, oh well, my trauma is worse than your trauma, that just doesn't exist. Trauma is trauma. Anytime we've been unheld, untouched, unheard, unloved is trauma. And we've all experienced that. So that's why we could come from an even greater place of compassion for ourselves and for others because of that. We can all share in that experience, but we can also move through that and allow that kid to play, because maybe they never had a chance to. So I totally ranted, which tends to happen every once in a while, but I also want to give you guys an opportunity to ask some questions. I also noticed at the HPP, when Helen was there, you had so many questions with like the spiritual side of stuff and meditation and all these sorts of things, and even anything that I just shared now. If you want to ask something, I'm all ears and all knowing. I think one of the main things is to set an example, because you can't tell somebody else to do an inner dive when you haven't done it yourself. And in order to be a true leader, you need to go first. And sometimes when you go first, it's scary and it's dark, and you got to cut the path, and you're not quite sure what's to come. And when you step up and you do that, then it's easier to shine the light behind you and tell people, hey, you know what? It's not bad over here. And I've definitely dove into the inner self, and I mean, it's a daily practice for me. And I think that if you don't do it, it's going to show up anyway in different ways. And like you said, it comes up in the relationships a lot. It comes up in your daily interactions. And I think it's really important to tune in and become aware of what is coming up for you. What kinds of emotions are you living in a lot of? Are you living in a lot of frustration? Are you noticing that a lot of people around you are lying? And are you noticing a lot of people around you are, holding a certain pattern? And a lot of times when you tune into that, into those repetitive things, it's a bit of a clue of what's going on within you. So if you come across a lot of liars, then it's like, okay, well, where am I lying? Like, is there a piece of me that I'm not honest with? You know, and ask yourself and go and just play in that for a little bit. If you're noticing that frustration's coming up a lot, don't like try to get rid of frustration. Sit with the frustration, you know, and be like, I'm really frustrated. Like, what is this about? You know, where does this stem from? And just ask those questions. It's kind of like turning into a Sherlock Holmes. You know, put on your little hat, get out your magnifying glass, and start asking yourself questions to really investigate. And because we know and we have all the answers within, you're going to find the answers. And then once you do, it's like, oh, okay, well, you know, I don't need to hold on to that anymore, you know? And it's funny because a lot of times there'll be experiences from when you're a kid that happened a couple times, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're still holding on to that energy because you never were taught how to move through that energy. So yeah, it's not so bad to go within. We try to resist it and resist it and resist it, and it's really a fear. But when you go within from a place of love and compassion. There's nothing to be scared of because it's all you anyway. It's you. So what are you scared of? If you make it a battle and you do attack, then you're always going to be in a war with yourself. But if you come, you know, put your guards down and just allow yourself to surrender in it and explore it from, again, curiosity is key, and explore it from a place of gentleness and compassion. And when something does come up, treat yourself like a child. Like, would you be like, get the fuck over it to a 5-year-old? No, like, you just wouldn't do that. So how would you talk to a 5-year-old? You'd be like, oh buddy, you know what? It's cool. And I want to tell you, like, I talk to myself like a little kid a lot. Like, oh sweetie, you're okay. Like, there's nothing to be afraid of. Like, look, touch the ground. It's just earth. You're all right. And I talk with that gentleness and that, you know, a little bit of like a mother voice. And it, you know, you guys are gonna be awesome moms one day, and you're gonna be awesome dads one day. Would you talk to your kid like that? Would you be like, suck it up, get to work? Like, no, we know that doesn't work anymore. So if you can learn how to talk to yourself from that gentleness, then you're gonna own that, and that's gonna be how you go into the world after. You know, we think that it's separate, the inner self is separate from the exterior, and it's not. It's all, everything that's happening around you is happening from you. And when you can tune into what's happening within, then you can really start to own and manifest what's happening around you, and then become like a little bit of a magician. When we are unhappy with the way things are, it's because the way we think it should be doesn't match with the way it is. So when you think you should be around your kids and they're moving away from you, it's not matching up. So you have two things to look at. Can you change the situation, or do you need to change the way you think about it? So if it's possible, can you shift the situation? If it's not, then how can you respond to it? And you can create a relationship with your kids that no matter where they are, they can feel connected to you. And it really forces an ability to be creative. And the reason why I'm tapping into this question specifically is because I'm about to travel, and I have a 5-year-old nephew who I'm really close with. I'm like a second mom. So I've been really thinking about creative ways on how I can continue that relationship when I'm not there in person. Coming up with things to do, little scavenger hunts around the house, or having scheduling time where you do Skype, scheduling time where it's like, okay, show me your homework from today. And sometimes you can have an even better relationship because of that. When you're under the same roof, you don't even see each other or talk, but because you have that challenge, it might really force you to schedule it. So to really change how you think about it, and instead of getting into a dip, look and see what you can come up with to make it work for you and the family. I love that you shared that too, because I find that when you do come from that pure compassion, love, because nobody's ever experienced it, you'll get a lot of resistance, and people will run in the opposite direction. It's really interesting to observe how people respond to that until they realize, oh wow, you're actually for real. And then they start to learn some trust. But that should be no reason to change either. And I think to understand how to meet someone's needs from a place of love, but also from a place that's real. And, a perfect example of that was when Talia was climbing the rope course, and we were all supporting her from the bottom, and I climbed after her and I got to the top, and she was not a happy camper, and she was pretty mad that the guy helped her at the top and was yelling at me. And if I came at it with like, oh, it's okay, I know, I get it, like it's cool, and like I was coming soft, there was no way I was going to connect with her. But I ended up yelling back and like swearing and being like, are you fucking kidding? Just totally out of character, but really needed to come from that masculine space to push against her and let her, speak her language in that moment. So it's not all like daisies, roses, and flowers sometimes. Sometimes you, to really support someone, you need to come from a different type of energy, but always centered and grounded. When I played in that energy, it wasn't out of control. It was from a very centered, grounded place. And especially with some of you guys that are tapping into populations that are really difficult, like I think, Ginger going into like the corporate world of men, and like, doing Dude's Day and like trying to win over guys when it comes to dating. Like, you're not dealing with the easiest crowd, and sometimes your approach has to come from a place that speaks their language, but always come from that grounded, centered place of love, from the heart. You can still be that powerhouse, but come from the heart. It's about being real. Like, that's what, it's not always, I don't know, I think sometimes we think spirit means like, okay, let's all dress in white and put our fingers together and om and be centered and drink tea. And yeah, that's all part of it, but there's also a reality side to it as well. It's just really about being honest with yourself. Because sometimes we're at the top of the world and we feel confident, we feel happy, we feel like a rock star and we're ready to rock and roll. We still have needs up there. We need some attention, we need some encouragement, we need some, support up there. But sometimes we're at the bottom, where we're in the dirt, and we feel frustrated and angry, we feel upset, we feel sad or in the dumps, and we have needs down there too. And it's important to ask yourself, what is it that I need in this moment, and honor it. And not to make everybody around you a mind reader, but to voice what you need in those moments as well. Thank you so much for having me. I love sharing this information because to me, it's a pleasure to work with you guys as individuals, but I really am excited because I know how many people you're working with within your circles, and that juices me. Because if you guys go within and you learn that it's safe in there, and you learn how to center yourself and come from that place of love and compassion, and then you're sharing that, the ripples, you'll never know them, and that's okay. It's out there, it's the best. So thank you. I am so excited to share all of this with you. There's just so much. I don't even know where to start. It's incredible. And I might just start with the polar dip because it was such a theme at HPP. In November, in Canada, where it's freezing, I went for a little meditation walk at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was at the lake. I'm like, I gotta get in. And I literally just like dropped all my clothes, and I'm bundled, like 5 layers bundled. Dropped all my clothes and went for a skinny dip and like screamed bloody murder. Ran out, got my clothes back on, and just like laughed the whole way home. And that was when it all started. I went to work that day and I felt like I was a tiger in a cage. And I thought, I gotta quit this place. Like that's it. I'm done here. This is it. Like, and I got into this like place of angst where I just knew that there was no other option. I needed to go. And I was, and I was really in a place of like anxiety. And I finally did some yoga and centered myself again and realized, okay, you know what? I know it's time to go, and the time will just be super clear when it's ready. That's it. So, I knew when I was going to HPP that it was probably going to be one of those experiences where it was like, it's all going to be clear after. So when I came back, it was clear. And this is the coolest thing. Like, there's just so much so much about this that's amazing. So on Tuesday, I wrote a handwritten letter to my supervisor that was super heartfelt and just thanking her for the experience. And on the envelope, I wrote, thank you. And when I went to her office, actually, you know what? Before, I went to her office and she wasn't there. So then I'm like, oh my God, maybe this is a sign. Maybe I'm not supposed to do this. Maybe I'm supposed to be patient. And I go into this like angst kind of place again. So I'm like, I have another supervisor who I work in a different division with too. So I'm like, okay, I'll go talk to her. So I go talk to the other supervisor, and she's like, well, you know, Laura, you really should talk to the union because there might be an opportunity for you with the deficit to do a leave. So I'm like, okay. So I leave and I go to my office. I'm like, maybe I should do that. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe this is just a distraction. Maybe I just need to like do this. And like, I've waited long enough. And I get into this conversation. And this is why I meditate, by the way. So then finally I center myself again. And that's finally when somebody was like, oh, Virginia's in, which is my supervisor. I'm like, I gotta just fucking do this. And I just grabbed the letter, walked down the hall, went into her office, and she knew right away. She's like, what's going on? Put the letter on her desk, and like I said, it said thank you on it. She's like, oh, and I'm like, oh, yeah, no, I'm resigning. And she's like, what? And her eyes filled up, and she started like, and I wasn't expecting, like I had gone through all of my emotions with everything, that to respond to her emotions too. She's like, okay, we need to hug this out. And it was such a beautiful, heartfelt place. And it was like, I couldn't have written a better resignation experience. It was so beautiful. So on Thursday, I announced it to my team, which was another like really emotional experience and super hard. And then Thursday afternoon, my union leader found out that I was resigning, and she came and talked to me, and she's like, did you not request a leave of absence in December? And I said yes, and it got denied. And she's like, did you respond when there was voluntary layoffs with the deficit? And I was like, no. So let's just make it shorter. She ended up talking to the director of the agency, and they offered me a voluntary layoff, which means I have a year and a half off, and it will be paid. So I got paid to quit last week. It's just crazy. Like when you open up to the universe, how it just supports you. So I realized that anybody that I talked to and was supporting last week just rocked. Like there was just magnificent things that were happening for them. And I was like, okay, you know what? This is happening for everybody I'm putting energy to. Why isn't this happening for the stuff I'm doing? And it was like, because you're not focusing on it. And I was like, oh. So I just went to town Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I created this whole website, which you guys totally have to take a look at because it's all the needs for the Good Deed Purpose. Good Deed Project. Good Deed Project is a journey from the East Coast to the West Coast, doing good deeds all along the way and featuring other people doing good deeds and making it into a documentary. Super cool idea that I thought was birthed in November. And then I found a journal that I wrote, and apparently I wrote this in my journal 5 years ago. So pull the Sylvie on that one. It was just so funny how this stuff rolls out. And I wrote to Tumbleweed Tiny House Company a week and a half ago by email, and I didn't hear anything back. And I was like, you know what? That's not okay. I gotta find them in another way. Found them on Facebook, wrote them a message on Facebook, told them everything about what this whole thing is about. And what it really is about is, in my community, we had more than half a dozen teens. And now I'm like really excited and talking about a serious thing, so please forgive me for putting like hyper energy into it. But we had more than half a dozen teens complete suicide. And suicide is really close to my heart because I've lost an uncle to suicide, an aunt to suicide, and a good friend. And I'm working with all these kids who are dying to suicide. So it was super intense, and I just went to town with training myself and going to different conferences, going to different events to kind of what is going on here, like what can we do to support these kids, and found out that it's like super basic stuff that you think is common knowledge, but it's not at all. And suicide awareness is really about being present, listening, noticing when someone's struggling with something and offering support, holding the fucking door behind you so that someone can catch up and walk through the door, acknowledging somebody, looking at their eyes, smiling, all these little things. I'm like, people don't know this shit. Like, how do people not know this? And realizing that what is supposed to be common knowledge is not common at all, because we are so engrossed in our own stuff that we don't even see beyond that. And that's why I'm so pumped to pump you guys up, because of the ripples you guys are gonna have. So that's the drive behind the Good Deeds Project, is to how can I reach out to more people? How can I offer this information out to more people? And that question is what led Live and Love with Laura. That question is what made me write a book. That question is what makes me do every single workshop, and everything that comes from everything I put out there is how can I get this message out to more people? And that birthed the Good Deeds Project. So Tumbleweed Tiny House Company wrote back the next day and said that they love the vision and they're on board with it. They said the only part of the vision that they can't support is having a DeLorean as the car pulling the tiny house, which is, this is the cool thing, that it's really about coming back from the future and saying that the way to save the world is to practice good deeds. So I'm thinking what I'll end up doing is make a video with the DeLorean in the tiny house. Yeah, Photoshop, exactly. And make it into like a commercial for the Good Deeds Project. And then having a truck somehow. And it's all just gonna come together. The image itself speaks so many words I don't even need to say. You know, like the tiny house movement is all about moving off the grid, living simply, going green. And then there's like a car of the future. It's just, the image is just, I just love it. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But people are coming out of the woodworks with supporting this. People I don't even know that have heard from somebody else contacting me and on board with stuff. Like, it's already happening, that it's just, it's such a riot, you know? And this is what it's all about. Like, to me, manifesting, you do your part, you plant the seed, and then, you know, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, comes in and rains. And sometimes you think it's a storm, but really it's watering your seed. And sometimes it's sunshine, and it, you know, helps it go too. And then you just watch it grow. You pull the weeds as they come up, and you just watch that plant grow. And I'm just watching this unfold. But please, definitely check out the registry, which is supposed to be for weddings and baby showers, and I totally just manipulated it and made it into a Good Deeds Project registry with all the stuff that is needed for it so far. I'm thinking it's gonna start on the East. I was thinking New York, but I'm also super open and flexible to allowing the whole process take place. Where, you know, I think it's just gonna be one of those things where I connect with someone and they say, oh, you should go to this place because this is happening. And I'm like, okay, and go check it out. Oh, and the best part about the whole thing is that the tiny house will eventually be parked on Cicada, and it'll be a residential spot that all of us can go and visit when it's all said and done. Isaac already mentioned that he was going to help with the website, which is great. I really appreciate that. And probably the whole documentary side of things. Like, I love doing videos, but I don't have professional equipment and that sort of thing, so talking to someone who knows that world would probably be helpful too. Thank you so much for allowing me to share, because it's been like, I'm house sitting right now, and I'm by myself with this cat, and the amount of times I've been jumping up and down like, yes, this is amazing. Like, so to have an opportunity to share with you guys and yeah, tell you all about it, and hopefully, I think I'll probably end up visiting each of you wherever nook of the world you're in. You're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you.